So I must depart in silence, and the council instantly laments it. Part 1. The Great Chamber of the Galactic Concordance. Council hummed with the low thrum of life support and the soft chatter of 100 alien tongues. Tall spires of polished obsidian rose from the floor, each one holding a delegate from a different world. Some floated in anti-grav bubbles, others sat on cushioned perches, and a few stood on too many legs to count. All of them were used to noise, to debate, to the endless push and pull of galactic politics. But today, silence fell like a stone. It began with a single alert on every comm panel in the room. No warning, no preamble, just a flat human voice, calm, clear, and final. Humanity is withdrawing from all interstellar affairs effective immediately. No further contact will be acknowledged. The message repeated once, then cut off. No signature, no coordinates, no reason. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the chamber erupted. The Zenthar delegate slammed 3 of his 6 fists onto his console. They cannot just leave, he growled, mandibles clicking in disbelief. We have joint defense pacts, shared research stations, trade routes that depend on their jump gate tech. Beside him, the slender Velm diplomat Corin tilted her feathered head. Her voice was quiet but sharp. They just did. Across the chamber, the insectoid Mirix envoy tapped rapidly on her data slate, pulling up real-time fleet logs. Her compound eyes flickered with alarm. All human vessels have vanished from patrol sectors Alpha through Theta. Their embassy on Orith Prime is dark. No signals, no power signatures, nothing. A murmur spread through the room. Some delegates whispered in fear. Others scoffed in anger. But beneath it all ran a current of something new. Doubt. Humans had always been strange to the rest of the galaxy. They were loud, emotional, and stubborn. They asked too many questions and refused to follow orders without understanding why. But they were also brilliant. Their engineers could fix a broken warp coil with scrap metal and hope. Their doctors had saved millions during the plague of Kessel 9. And when the Cathar swarm came, devouring whole systems in their path, it was human pilots who flew into the heart of the storm and held the line long enough for the Concordance to regroup. Now, without warning, they were gone. On the edge of the chamber, a young human liaison named Leo Hayes stood alone. He wore a simple gray jumpsuit, no rank insignia, no fancy armor, just a man among aliens who suddenly felt very small. He had been delivering routine supply manifests when the message hit. Now every eye in the room turned to him, as if he held the answers. "Do you know anything about this?" Corin asked, her voice gentle but firm. Leo shook his head slowly. "No, I swear. I haven't heard from Earth in weeks. My last message bounced back as undeliverable." The Zenthar snorted. Convenient, Leo didn't argue. He just stared at the floor, his jaw tight. He knew something was wrong. Earth didn't just go quiet, not unless it had to. Outside the chamber, the city of Orith Prime buzzed with confusion. Human-run cafes shut their doors. Cargo ships with Earth registry sat empty in the docks. Even the street-level repair bots designed by human hands began to glitch, their programming suddenly missing key updates. The galaxy had leaned on humanity more than anyone wanted to admit. Back in the council chamber, the debate raged on. "They've imploded," declared the reptilian delegate from Vexus. "Their society was too chaotic, too emotional. I warned you all," Corin frowned. "If they collapsed, why leave a clean, clear message? Why vanish so completely? A civil war would leave wreckage, signals, screams, not silence." No one had a good answer. Meanwhile, far beyond the council world in the cold void between stars, a massive human convoy moved in perfect formation. Hundreds of ships, freighters, colony vessels, even old warships retrofitted for civilian use, slipped through the dark like ghosts. At the helm of the lead freighter, the Marlowe, Captain Elena Ruiz watched the last known coordinates of Sol fade from her view screen. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady as she addressed her crew over the intercom. "All ships confirmed jump readiness. Final course locked. No deviations." A young navigator, barely 20, swallowed hard. "Captain, are we really never going back?" Elena didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the stars ahead. "Not if we want the rest of the galaxy to live." She didn't say more. She didn't have to. They all knew the truth now. Earth's scientists had found something in the deep scans. Something ancient, something hungry. It slept beyond the Veil Nebula, wrapped in layers of dead space and time. But it was waking, And every broadcast, every energy spike, every act of war or panic brought it closer to full awareness. Humanity had made a choice, not to fight, not to warn, but to disappear so the thing wouldn't notice the galaxy at all. Back on Orith Prime, the Council finally voted. By a narrow margin, they declared humanity presumed non-functional due to internal collapse. The official report would cite political instability and resource exhaustion. It was easier to believe that than to face the terrifying possibility that humans had left to protect everyone else. Leo Hayes listened to the announcement from a quiet corner of the embassy. He knew it was a lie. He also knew he couldn't stay. If Earth was truly gone, then his duty was clear. He packed a small bag, wiped all his personal logs, and walked out the back door just before Concordant security arrived to question him further. As he boarded a smuggler's skiff bound for the outer rim, he looked up at the stars one last time. Somewhere out there, Earth was silent, and that silence was the loudest warning of all. The Council would learn the truth soon enough, but by then, it might already be too late. Humans depart in silence, and the Council instantly laments it. Part 2. 3 months passed, and the silence from humanity only grew deeper. At first, the Galactic Concordance tried to pretend nothing had changed. Trade agreements were rewritten. Patrol routes were adjusted. New protocols were issued to replace human-designed systems. But the cracks began to show. Fast. On the medical outpost of Series 9, a Zenthar child died because the antiviral synthesizer failed. The machine had been built by human engineers and relied on a calibration sequence no one else understood. Technicians from 3 species tried to fix it, but without the human touch, their strange mix of logic and instinct, it stayed dead. The child's mother wept in a language no translator could soften. On the mining world of Draxos IV, entire tunnels collapsed when the gravity stabilizers shut down. The stabilizers used human-made resonance chips that degraded without weekly updates from Earth servers. No updates came. No fixes followed. 57 miners were lost before the Concordance admitted they couldn't restart the system. Even the warlike Cathar, who had once sworn to wipe out humanity, now sent quiet pleas to the Council. Their bioship's targeting arrays, originally reverse-engineered from a captured human fighter, were failing. Without precise aim, their swarm tactics turned chaotic. They asked almost humbly if anyone had spare human targeting modules. No one did. The Council grew desperate. Teams of scientists tore apart every piece of human tech they could find. They scanned, probed, and simulated. But human inventions were not just machines, they were extensions of human thought. Simple on the outside, layered with intuition on the inside. A human engineer might adjust a setting based on a feeling, a hunch, a memory of rain on a childhood window. Aliens could not replicate that. They only saw code and circuits, not the soul behind them. While the Council floundered far from the capital on the abandoned moon of Helios 7, a young xenolinguist named Mara Finch worked alone. She had been stationed there to study human cultural archives before the Exodus. When the silence fell, she chose to stay. The Concordance forgot about her. Just one more human ghost in a system full of them. Helios 7's research dome was cold and dim, powered by a failing solar array. Mara lived on ration packs and stubborn hope. She spent her days sifting through old data logs, voice recordings, and fragmented messages left behind in the rush to leave. Most were mundane: supply requests, birthday greetings, weather reports. But one file, buried deep in a scientist's private folder, caught her eye. It was labeled only Project Lullaby. Inside, she found star charts marked with strange symbols, energy readings from the Veil Nebula, and notes scribbled in shaky handwriting. One line stood out: "It hears us when we shout. It wakes when we fight, but it does not understand silence." Mara's heart pounded. She cross-referenced the data with public astronomical records. The Veil Nebula had shown unusual energy dips in the months before humanity vanished, dips that matched no known natural phenomenon. And right after the human departure, those dips stopped, as if something had paused. She compiled her findings into a report and sent it to the Concordance Science Directorate. Her message was clear. Humanity didn't leave because they fell apart. They left because they discovered a threat so vast, so ancient, that even speaking of it might draw its attention. The reply came 3 days later. Short. Dismissive. Your theory lacks empirical support. Human behavior is consistent with societal collapse. Cease unauthorized speculation. Mara stared at the screen, jaw tight. They didn't believe her. Or worse, they didn't want to. She tried again, this time sending encrypted copies to trusted contacts in the Veln and Mirix delegations. Still nothing. The council had made up its mind. Humans were gone. Good riddance, but Mara wasn't ready to give up. She dug deeper into Project Lullaby. She found audio logs of late-night conversations between Earth scientists. Voices tired, scared, but resolute. "We can't tell them," one said. "If the Concordance panics, they'll send fleets to investigate. Energy spikes. Weapon tests. That's all it needs to wake up, so we just disappear?" Another asked. "Yes," came the quiet reply. "We vanish so they live a little longer." Mara played that clip over and over. It wasn't madness. It was mercy. Meanwhile, on Orith Prime, the Council faced growing unrest. Trade lanes slowed. Medical crises spread. Even entertainment networks suffered. Human-written holodramas had been wildly popular for their emotional depth, something alien scripts often lacked. People missed them. They missed the humans. Corin, the Velon diplomat, began quietly gathering evidence of humanity's quiet importance. She visited depots where human-made parts sat unused. She spoke to engineers who admitted they couldn't replace a simple human-designed coolant valve. She even tracked down Leo Hayes' last known location, only to find his quarters empty, his personal logs wiped clean. He knew, she told her aide one evening. He knew they were leaving, and he chose to go with them. But there was no trace of him. Back on Helios 7, Mara made a risky decision. She bypassed Concordance firewalls and accessed the deep archives of the Odyssey, a human deep space probe that had gone silent near the Veil Nebula 6 months before the Exodus. Buried in its final transmission was a single image, a spiral of darkness, not empty but alive. Stars around it were being pulled in not by gravity but by something worse, something that fed on attention itself. She attached the image to a new message, this time addressed to every major news outlet in the Concordance. "Look," she wrote. "Just look." The message was blocked before it left the moon's server. Someone high up had flagged her activity. Security drones were dispatched to Helios 7. They would arrive in 48 hours. Mara knew she had little time. She copied all her data onto a hardened drive, the kind humans used for emergency evacuations, and hid it inside a maintenance bot scheduled for junk disposal. Then she erased her main terminal and sat in the dark dome watching the stars. She thought of Earth, of cities gone quiet, of parents whispering lullabies to children they hoped would never know why the sky fell silent. The council called it collapse. But Mara knew the truth. Humanity hadn't broken, they had bent so the rest of the galaxy wouldn't snap. And somewhere out there in the endless dark they were still watching. Waiting. Hoping their sacrifice would be enough. The drones would come. They would find an empty station and a missing linguist. But the truth was already loose, carried on a tiny drive tumbling through space heading toward the outer rim where someone, someday, might listen. Until then, the silence held. And the council, blind and proud, kept pretending it meant nothing. Humans depart in silence and the council instantly laments it. Part 3. The first sign that something was truly wrong came not from a scientist or a soldier, but from a ghost ship, drifting near the edge of the Veil Nebula, where no sane vessel dared to go. The derelict science cruiser, Aurora, powered up without warning. Its lights flickered on. Its comms array rotated slowly, like an old man stretching after a long sleep. Then for exactly 17 seconds, it broadcast a single image across every open frequency in the sector. It showed a spiral of pure blackness. Not empty space, but something alive. A void that swallowed light. Stars and time itself. Around it, entire systems blinked out like candles in a storm. The image carried no sound, no message, just that terrible shape. Then the Aurora went dark again, its power gone as suddenly as it had returned. Within hours, the Concordance Council was in chaos. Reports flooded in from the outer rim. 3 star systems, Kessel 4, Varnus Prime, and the Mirix breeding colonies, had vanished from long-range sensors. Not destroyed, not damaged. Simply gone, no debris, no energy echoes. Just silence where there had once been life. Panic spread faster than any plague. The Cathar swarm, thought to be broken after the last war, reappeared, but not to attack. They fled. Their bioships tore through neutral space in wild, desperate patterns, as if running from a nightmare. Many were shredded by unseen forces, their remains scattered like ash. The Council sent its best fleets to investigate. The Veln 7th Armada, the Zenthar Ironclaw, the Myrick Shadow Wing, all vanished within days of entering the nebula's outer rim. No distress calls, no wreckage, just empty space where proud warships had been. That was when the Council finally stopped pretending. In a closed emergency session, Corin stood before the assembled delegates, her feathers ruffled with exhaustion. "We were wrong," she said, her voice low but clear. "Humanity did not collapse. They saw this coming, and they left to keep it from waking." No one argued. The evidence was too heavy to ignore, but knowing the truth did not bring answers. The Concordants had no weapons that could fight a darkness that erased reality. Their shields, their cannons, their logic, all useless against something that fed on attention itself. Then, a sliver of hope. Deep in the Concordance's oldest shipyard on Xylos Prime, mothballed under layers of dust and protocol, sat the Haven, once a human light cruiser, gifted to the Council during the Cathar War as a symbol of trust. It had been decommissioned years ago, deemed too unpredictable for standard operations. Human ships, the engineers complained, never followed the rules. They adapted. They improvised. They felt. Now that was exactly what the Council needed. But there was a problem. No one could fly it. Human interfaces responded to neural patterns, emotional states, even voice inflections. Aliens had tried before. The ship either refused to start or locked them out entirely. Then someone remembered Ben Carter. Ben was a human engineer, stranded on a deep-core mining station when the Exodus happened. His transport had been delayed by a plasma storm, and by the time he returned to port, Earth was already silent. He had stayed, working odd jobs, keeping to himself, speaking only when spoken to. The Council had ignored him until now. They found him in a repair bay on Xylos, elbow deep in a faulty coolant pump. 2 armed guards stood behind him as Corin made the request. "We need you to help us fly the Haven," she said. "We need to reach the Veil Nebula." Ben wiped grease from his hands and looked at her. His eyes were tired but sharp. "Why?" "Because everything is ending," Corin said simply. "And you're the only one who might know how to stop it." Ben was silent for a long time. He thought of Earth, of his sister who had sent him a final message he never understood. "Don't look back. Just keep fixing things," he nodded. "I'll do it. But on one condition. You follow my lead. No questions. No overrides. You trust me or we don't go." Corin agreed without hesitation. Work began at once. Ben climbed aboard the Haven like he was coming home. The ship hummed softly as his hand touched the control panel. Lights flickered on. Systems booted up, not with the cold precision of alien tech, but with a warmth, a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. He spent days rewiring, recalibrating, speaking to the ship in low tones. He bypassed the Council's rigid command protocols and restored the old human override codes. He even found a hidden music file buried in the core. Amazing grace, and loaded it into the comm system. "What's that for?" asked a Zenthar technician. Ben just smiled faintly. "Distraction." Meanwhile, word reached them of Mara Finch. Her data drive had been recovered by a salvage crew near the outer rim. Her findings confirmed everything. The entity in the Veil Nebula wasn't just a predator. It was a cosmic echo, drawn to strong emotions, to conflict, to noise. Humanity's silence had thrown it off balance. But the Council's panic, their fleets, their fear, they were calling it closer. Ben knew they had little time. He requested one more thing, a linguist who understood human patterns. Corin sent for Mara. She arrived pale and thin, but her eyes burned with purpose. She brought with her the full logs of Project Lullaby, including the final weapon design, a resonance pulse keyed to the entity's frequency, meant to disrupt its form without triggering a full awakening, but it needed a living mind to calibrate it in real time, a mind that could feel the shift in the void and adjust the frequency on instinct. Ben read the notes and went quiet. He knew what it meant. The pilot would not survive. Still, he didn't back down. The Haven was ready. Mara joined the crew, along with a small team of volunteers, Veln, Myrick, even a young Zenthar who had lost his entire hive to the darkness. They trusted Ben because they had no one else to trust. As the ship lifted from the hangar, Ben stood at the helm, hands steady on the controls. The stars stretched ahead, beautiful and terrible. He thought of Earth one last time, not as a memory, but as a promise. Then he engaged the slipstream drive, and the Haven shot toward the Veil Nebula, carrying the last hope of a galaxy that had only just learned how much it owed to the humans who left in silence. Humans depart in silence, and the Council instantly laments it. Part 4. The Haven moved through the void like a whisper. Outside its hull, space grew strange. Stars flickered as if seen through old glass. Light bent in wrong directions. Time itself seemed to stretch and yawn. The crew stayed quiet, eyes on their screens. Hearts pounding in chests that had never known true fear until now. Ben Carter sat at the main console, fingers dancing over controls that responded not to commands but to intent. He didn't just fly the ship, he listened to it. The Haven was old, but it remembered Earth. It remembered human hands, human voices, human hope. And it trusted Ben. Mara Finch stood beside him, her eyes fixed on a data stream only she could fully understand. She had spent the journey translating the last fragments of Project Lullaby into something the ship's systems could use. The resonance weapon wasn't a bomb. It was a song, a frequency tuned to the entity's core, meant to unravel it from the inside without screaming loud enough to wake its full hunger. But it needed a pilot who could feel the shift in the dark and adjust the tune in real time. That was Ben's job, and Mara's. Approaching the outer rim, she said softly. Ben nodded. Power down all non-essential systems. No shields. No weapons. Just life support and the core. The Zenthar engineer, Rel, frowned. No shields? If that thing attacks, it won't attack if we don't act like prey, Ben cut in. It hunts noise, fear, conflict, so we give it none of that. He flipped a switch and the ship went dark except for a soft amber glow from the cockpit. Even the hum of the engines faded to a whisper. The Haven coasted now, silent as a stone dropped in deep water. Mara pulled up the final logs from Earth's last broadcast. Hidden in plain sight, wrapped in a children's lullaby transmission, was the calibration key. She fed it into the resonance core. A low tone began to build in the ship's bones, not loud but deep like the sound of a planet breathing. Then without warning, the entity noticed them. Space ahead twisted. Stars vanished. A cold pressure filled the cabin, not physical but mental. A weight on the mind, a pull toward forgetting. Rel gasped, clutching his head. One of the Murex crew members began to sob, whispering names of lost kin. Ben didn't flinch. He turned up the resonance tone slightly, just enough to push back. Mara, now. She opened the comms channel and played the old Earth song, Amazing Grace, War, on every frequency the ship could reach. The melody floated out into the dark, simple and sad and full of something the entity had never known. Mercy. For a moment the pressure eased. The stars returned. The cold lifted. It's confused, Mara whispered. It doesn't understand music. It doesn't understand grief that doesn't scream. Ben's hands moved faster. He wasn't just flying now, he was weaving. The Haven danced through pockets of warped space, avoiding the worst of the distortion, always keeping the resonance tone steady. He used human tricks the Council would never approve of, overloading a coolant line to create a false heat signature, rerouting power through the waste recycler to mask their energy trail. To alien logic it made no sense, but to the ship it felt right. Hours passed. The crew grew tired, hungry, scared, but no one spoke of turning back. They had seen what the darkness left behind. Empty systems, silent worlds, the ghosts of civilizations erased without a fight. They knew this was their only chance. Mara studied the data. The entity was vast but not infinite. It had a core, a point where its awareness gathered. If they could hit that point with the full resonance pulse at the right moment, it might shatter. But the window would be small. And the cost would be high. She looked at Ben. He met her eyes and nodded. He already knew. They entered the heart of the Veil Nebula. Here, space was not space anymore. It was a wound. Light died before it could travel a meter. Time looped in on itself. The ship's chronometer spun wildly, then stopped. Ben gripped the controls tighter. Get ready, he said. Mara activated the final sequence. The resonance core glowed blue, then white. The song grew louder, not in volume, but in presence. It filled the ship, the void, the silence between atoms. Then they saw it, not with their eyes, but in their minds, a shape of endless hunger, older than stars, waiting in the dark. It turned toward them, not with rage, but with curiosity. And that was worse. Ben didn't hesitate. He pushed the Haven forward, straight into the center of the spiral. Alarms blared, then died as systems overloaded. The hull groaned. Lights flickered out. Mara held onto the console, reading the final numbers. Frequency stable. Pulse ready, but it needs a living mind to lock the tone. Ben reached for the neural link cable. It would connect his brain directly to the resonance core. He would feel the entity's mind as it unraveled. And it would feel him. He plugged it in. Pain exploded behind his eyes, not physical, but deeper. He saw Earth as it was in its last days. Cities quiet, children sleeping, parents holding hands in the dark, all choosing silence so others might live. He saw the faces of everyone he'd ever loved. He saw the galaxy, broken, proud, blind, and he forgave it. Then he sang with his mind. The resonance pulse fired, not as a blast, but as a wave of pure, quiet truth. The entity shuddered. Its form cracked like old ice. Stars reappeared in the distance. Time snapped back into place. The Haven shook violently. Consoles sparked. Hull plates screamed. Mara crawled to Ben's side. His eyes were open but empty. Smoke curled from the neural port on his temple. He was gone, but the song played on. Outside, the spiral of darkness collapsed inward, not with a bang, but with a sigh. Then it was gone. Only stars remained. Cold, distant, but whole. The Haven, broken but breathing, drifted in the calm. Mara activated the emergency beacon. She knew the council would come. They would find a dead ship, a dead pilot, and a truth too heavy to ignore. She sat beside Ben's body and played Amazing Grace one last time, softly just for him, somewhere far away. Earth remained silent, but the galaxy had finally learned to listen. Humans depart in silence, and the council instantly laments it. Part 5. The rescue ship found the Haven drifting near the edge of the Veil Nebula, its hull scarred but intact, its lights dim but steady. Inside, they found Mara Finch sitting alone in the cockpit, wrapped in a thermal blanket, staring at the stars. Ben Carter's body lay covered in the med bay, his face peaceful as if he had simply fallen asleep after a long day's work. The ship's logs told the rest of the story, every second of the final approach, the resonance pulse, the collapse of the darkness. And the song. Always the song. When the data reached the Concordance Council, silence fell again, but this time it was different. It was not the silence of confusion or denial. It was the silence of shame. Delegates who had once mocked humanity as chaotic, emotional, or weak now sat with their heads bowed. The Zenthar envoy wept openly, his mandibles trembling. The reptilian delegate from Vexus, who had declared humanity doomed by its own nature, refused to speak for 3 full sessions. Corin stood before the chamber and played the final transmission from the Haven, not the technical logs, but the audio of Amazing Grace echoing into the void as the entity unraveled. No one moved. No one spoke. For the first time in the Council's long history, every species understood the same thing at once. Humanity had not abandoned them. They had saved them. In the weeks that followed, the Concordance did something it had never done before. It honored a species not for its weapons or its wealth, but for its quiet courage. Statues were raised, not of soldiers, but of teachers, doctors, engineers, and poets. On Orth Prime, a great memorial was built in the shape of a closed hand, palm outward, not in threat, but in farewell. At its base, a single line was carved in every known language. They left so we could stay. Mara Finch was invited to speak at the unveiling. She stood before thousands, her voice small but clear. Humans didn't believe they were better than us, she said. They just believed we were worth saving, even if we never knew why. She did not stay for the celebrations. She took a small transport and returned to Helios 7, the moon where she had first uncovered the truth. The research dome was still empty, still cold, but now it felt sacred. There, in the quiet, she found a box Ben had hidden before the final mission. Inside was a harmonica, old, dented, human-made, and a note, "If we win, play it for me." If we lose, play it anyway. She sat on the dome's edge, looking up at the stars, and played Amazing Grace on the harmonica. The tune was rough, off-key in places, but honest. And in that moment it felt like Earth was listening. Back on Orth Prime, the Council began to change. Trade routes were rebuilt with human-style redundancy, simple, flexible, forgiving. Medical outposts adopted human triage protocols that valued life over efficiency. Even the Cathar swarm, now leaderless and broken, were offered sanctuary instead of destruction. They ran from the same darkness we did, Corin argued. Fear makes monsters of us all. Slowly, quietly, the galaxy began to heal, not by becoming more like humans, but by learning from what humans had shown them, that strength could be gentle, that sacrifice could be silent, and that sometimes the loudest act of love was walking away. Years passed. New ships were built with human-inspired designs. Children across 100 worlds learned Earth songs in school. The phrase human solution no longer meant messy or illogical. It meant clever, kind, and brave. No one ever heard from Earth again. No signals, no ships. No me. Sages, but that didn't matter. Humanity's legacy was no longer in their technology or their words. It was in the way the galaxy chose to live after they were gone. On the anniversary of the Exodus, the Concordance held a moment of silence across all member worlds. For exactly 1 minute, every broadcast, every engine, every weapon system shut down. Not as a show of mourning, but as a promise we will not forget. We will not shout when silence is needed. We will protect what you gave us. Mara, now older, her hair streaked with gray, stood again on Helios 7 and played the harmonica one more time. The stars above were bright and steady. Somewhere out there, beyond the Veil Nebula, beyond the edge of known space, Earth remained hidden, but not lost. And in the quiet between the notes, if you listened closely, you could almost hear them singing back.